post here in 1 second. Give me a minute to send the live stream to. Hello, guys. This is day zero. This is the After Hour podcast series I am doing. Today I'm joined by Terrified of AI. And if you're watching this later, it's just a recording. Feel free to skip through certain segments as it takes us a second to get set up here, as well as to get viewers into the live stream. So,
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about money because that's what I do all day anyway. So it should be a good time.
hmm. Okay, so my post is posted.
All right.
I accidentally clicked on something else, but it should be posted. And
All right.
then
I will
I'm
check.
clicking the link, making sure it sends me over to the stream. It does. All right, perfect. How'd y'all do this week? Colton, I did pretty well this week. I'm just happy to be alive,
Mm.
honestly.
For sure, dude. I know we were supposed to do this the other night, and when you sent that picture and that post, I was like, oh God, that's why he hasn't responded to me. That's crazy. So
Yeah,
glad to
I
hear you're doing
wasn't
better.
expecting that, man. I was not expecting and then like you were saying a minute ago, like you walk away from it and you're just like, man, like I walked away scot-free and then like a couple days later, oh, my neck hurts. And it's you know what I mean? It's not like I'm trying to run up some insurance scam or something. Like there's no reason for me to lie about that stuff unless I was talking to insurance or something. Like it legitimately like my neck and my back and stuff just hurts, man.
Dude, sorry, my this account on After Hour literally just followed me and has liked every post that I've done. It's like they're scrolling through my feed and just liking every post, which it makes me think it's a bot.
No, I don't think so, because I just did post your name into the chat,
No,
and
I know,
sometimes,
but it's the
yeah,
same account going through every post one by one.
yeah, no, that's pretty much what some of the people that
Maybe
follow
it's
me
the day
do.
zero.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
it's
it
the
is
day
a little
zero
bit.
effect.
But we can go ahead and get started. Like, did you want to jump into financial literacy or anything?
Sure. Did you have anything kind of specific you wanted to
No,
talk
free
about?
reign, man,
Let me
free
pull up
reign.
the.
Just, uh, just throw a class at us, anything, man. I'm here to hear from the professional.
All right. Let me. I'm trying to get to your post, but it's getting buried by this one person liking every single. I'm
That's
trying to get to
awesome.
the link to jump in into this, but all right,
It's all
here we
good,
go.
man. Thank you guys. We've got about 30 viewers currently. Um, Boss Haas says it's him. What do you think of XRP? Okay, that's a good question, Rubio. Asking about XRP. Uh, a lot of people aren't familiar with some of those utility cryptos. That's the term I like to use for them. Utility coins, right? Because they have purpose, right? I believe once it gets an ETF, it'll skyrocket to about $5, and then it'll maintain a new bottom of about $5. But that's looking into mid-year, I'd say. And then crypto winter is going to pretty much happen a few months after that. So, I mean, if you're in the crypto itself and not the ETF, you can expect probably $5 price, and then realistically from there that'll probably occur. The ETF will probably be crafted right towards the beginning of that crypto winter, like Q3 of this year. So just be prepared with for that. But from its current level, I do believe it'll go up to about $5 towards the end of Bitcoin's run as well for the year. Talk about buying SPY and QQQ options. Yeah, I can talk about that. Well, you're still looking for that, right?
No, I got the link, so I just wanted to pull up the chat to see what
Okay,
you're
yeah.
seeing as well, just to see. I'm not the zero DTE guy, so I will let you talk about that kind of stuff. Um,
Alexander, zero DT is never worth it if you don't know what you're doing specifically. Um, Rick Tech Robotics, that's definitely a gamble. Anything robotics, play wise, had a gigantic run leading up to CES, which is an event that's already passed. So now it'll be just dependent on um, future events that
Positive news. Yeah.
future robotics events that Rick Tech shows up at. Okay, so I'm gonna jump a little bit off topic. I mean, back on topic realistically, but I did want to answer some of those questions first. Um,
No, for sure.
so
I
I'll
agree
let you
that
kind of
people
jump
are here to
into
talk about it, so
definitely. Yeah, I'm not gonna ignore questions. So I'm gonna jump into them,
for
but
sure.
jumping back onto the course of the podcast today, which is financial literacy. What you're pretty much an expert at this. So I'll just let you run with just the first thing that
Sure.
comes to
Why
your
don't I
mind,
start?
really.
I can give a little bit of my background just so people know a little bit more about me, and if they have questions, you can put them in the chat, and I'll see if I can what I can answer. Because a lot of people are uncomfortable asking questions in a kind of a Discord room where I do that sometimes. But I have about a little over a decade of financial professional experience in the realm of financial planning, tax strategy, business strategy, pretty much anything other than day trading. Um, I have a lot of experience in when it comes to personal finance. What I The reason that I joined After Hour was to learn more about people who are doing very short term trades because that's not the way that I traditionally have invested. I have a portfolio that's done very, very well um, that I have shared on After Hour, which is I basically cap weight the top 25 of the NASDAQ. Um, and after looking at it more, I could probably just have done the top 15. But I basically take all of them and adjust the cap weighting to lean more into the larger companies, and that's paid extreme dividends over the past 2 years. I think back to back years, I'm up 60%, um, which is great because it's a rules based account. I call it my diamond hands account because I won't sell anything unless the rules tell me to, and I won't buy anything unless the rules tell me to. But I have a I have a great kind of respect for people who are like Day Zero and like some of the other people on the app that are able to find inefficiencies in the market in a way that I haven't looked at before. So one of the things that I try to bring to After Hour, because there's not a ton of it there, is pretty much anything about financial literacy. So what can you as an individual do to better your financial situation outside of just trading? Because it's great if anyone can hit a home run on a penny stock, but that's not realistic for more people, for most people in the world. And I really started doing that after I saw Color of Cash post a bunch of things, and I said, "There's a real need for this in the community." Um, so that's what I do with my account. I post general financial literacy. Some of it's super basic, and then other things are very complicated. I had to post one of my favorite ones is I hypothetically saved Sir Jack like $3 million when he sells After Hour just by a different kind of investment strategy. So that's what I do here. And I appreciate all the support that people have given me and questions they ask. And I try to engage with everyone as much as I can to help them get on the right foot because I think there's a lack of financial literacy in the United States, specifically around long-term investing and the tax code. I think is where a lot of people can find a lot of value in what I talk about, especially tax alpha, right? the difference between what you get in a return in a Roth IRA versus what you get in an after-tax account. Um, those are real numbers, especially if you're trading often. Um, for example, I was running, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but essentially, if you do well and make a decent income and you're also trading regularly, you need, like, if you're making 30%, right? Because I know a lot of people here, the goal is to outperform the market. So if you're making 30% in an after tax account, well, if you made 22 and a half or something like that, I forget the number off the top of my head, in a Roth account, that's the same return because you have to pay taxes on the gains that you have. So it's things like that that people don't necessarily think of that I like to bring to your attention so that you can plan around those kinds of things. Like at the end of the year, if you have something that's a losing stock and you have a loss, well, you should sell that and lock in that loss so that you can offset gains because a lot of people do really well in after hours. So it's things like that that I like to talk about. Um, and that's how I first started talking to Today Zero a lot. I think I commented on one of his posts. I was like, "Oh, put some of that aside for taxes because it's going to be a lot. You've done really well." And we got to talking and really enjoyed getting to know you better.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Definitely, definitely appreciated that advice. Although, like, obviously, I've had some financial stuff going on since then. Uh, definitely worth thinking about the taxes and what's being basically how much you're gonna owe if you're just trading in an open account rather than like in a retirement account. Definitely,
Yeah, I would. It is a good problem, right? So I hear it a lot that it's great to have a tax problem because that means you did something right. It's just that it does feel really bad when you have to give that back to the government, right? Um, so I definitely can relate to that. Um, always want to have that tax problem, but how can you tackle that tax problem as efficiently as possible so that you're keeping more wealth for you and your family and uh, giving the least amount that you can to the government? And the way I think about taxes is give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Just make that number as low as possible. So and keep as much of that in house as possible. So a Roth IRA, Alice asked a good question. What is the age? What age is the penalty cutoff for an early withdrawal in a Roth? So generally speaking, in a Roth IRA, um, you can withdraw gains from the account as long as it's been in the account for 5 or more years after age 59 and a half, which is a long time. But what a lot of people don't know is that you actually, if you need to, you can pull basis out of a Roth, which is another word for your contributions to a Roth, tax free and penalty free without any issues. So a lot of people think that Roth IRAs, you're locked up, but you're not actually as locked up as you'd think. You can still access that basis. The problem with that is that you have less money in the account for those juicy tax free gains. That is what makes Roth so powerful. Um, and to answer the next question is, yeah, I would, if you have the ability to, I would max out the largest Roth account that you can every single year. For
also
some
to
people,
just
that's going
jump
to be a
in
Roth
here,
IRA.
there are some ways to
Yeah,
also
go
get
ahead.
out of it pretty easily. Like if you're buying your first home, as well as
Yes.
qualified adoptions, there are people that kind of so qualified adoptions as well as what's it called? Buying your first home, you can easily pull your money out for. Which if you don't
Yeah,
own a
those are
home
called
and you want to,
hardships.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's
So if
without
you're,
the hardship. That's I believe even I don't think you get the hardship withdrawal for those. I think that's the exclusions to the hardship withdrawal. Like I think that's just like where you pull your money out without any
it's one of the ways you can pull the money out without a
right.
penalty. There's
Because there is hardship
oh,
withdrawals where you have to. lose like 30% of your, basically they tax it is what's going on. But like there's ways you can fumble it and lose a lot of money, but
Yeah. Yep. And that's they'll only on a Roth IRA at least they'll only tax the gains. So basis from a Roth is always tax and penalty free when you take it out. But yes, you're right. There are ways to access money, including gains from a Roth, without needing to that without paying a penalty.
right. Which I'm right now I'm paying like not paying. I mean in my head I'm paying, but right now I have I think 7% contribution plus 5% company match.
Yep. So for one Roth 401k is a really interesting one because there's a much larger limit on a Roth 401k. Uh,
Mhm.
if you were under 50, that number's 23,500. So substantially higher than a Roth IRA. So if you have the ability to contribute to a Roth 401k, the, mo- eh, the most you can put towards it for retirement without inhibiting your ability for two things. One, to meet your monthly obligations, but also to have flexibility. Because one of the things that I see a lot with young people is they're maxing out. They hear that I need to be maxing out my retirement accounts and things of that nature. But then when they're basically retirement account poor is what I call it, where all their money's locked up. And I'm currently in a somewhat similar boat where I have a lot of money, but a lot of it is locked up in a retirement account that I don't want to touch because it will hurt my retirement picture in the future. Um,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas having some liquidity um, that you're more flexible with is there's something freeing about that I think there's a lot of value to it. So I wouldn't just without thinking about it max out, but the most you can while maintaining flexibility, I think is a really powerful thing to do for a Roth account.
Okay. So moving on from retirement accounts, right? Is there anything else you'd like to bring up, like when it comes to financial literacy? Like something that like the typical trader might have an issue with.
Or not be familiar with necessarily.
Right. And it can be something not even stock market related. Like you can take it to car loans, you could take it to loans in general, like how to pay your way out of debt, like pretty much anything.
Yeah. So we can talk about debt. Uh,
Using debt as a currency or staying completely out of debt, like the drawbacks to either one of those scenarios.
yeah. So let's talk about. Well, I see a question here. So um, let me answer that question real quick,
Okay.
very briefly. Um, it says how much at retirement, how much cash should you have on hand? Um, I think 2 to 3 years is a lot for expenses, but there's a couple ways to think about it. Basically, I keep and in retirement, what I tell people is you should keep 3 to 6 months, but I lean more towards 6 months in liquid emergency fund in cash. Um, you don't typically need more than that. Um, if you feel like a lot of traders will try to time the market, which some are really good at it and some are terrible at it. But
And some are
if
really
you
good
feel
at it
like,
and then really terrible at it in the same day.
yeah, it can that can certainly happen, right? So, um, if you want to try to time the market and pull some money out and hold it in cash, I don't think that's a bad thing. But the challenge is that you really need to get in at the right time. If you miss the entry and have a bad entry, then that can mean hundreds of percents in the long run. So I think that I think that I wouldn't have more than a year's worth of expenses because then you're just losing to inflation. Even if it's in a high yield money market account, you're generally speaking losing to inflation or just at inflation. So I'm not a huge fan of cash, um, but you definitely need to have some. So I think that's the best answer I can give you to that question. Um, so now let's talk. We can talk about debt for sure. And I think that the next answer has a very good point. Um, so debt is a big thing that people don't understand. And my favorite quote when it comes to financial literacy is from, I believe it's Warren Buffett. Uh, it's compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who get it receive it, and those who don't pay it. And debt can really snowball someone's life out of control if they're not diligent in paying that down. And some people need to go into debt for multiple different reasons. One of them is student loans. But generally speaking, there's a couple different ways to address debt. Um, it would be one of the first things that I try to tackle um, when you're looking at organizing your financial life. I don't think it's the only thing to consider, and your interest rate is going to have a lot to do with that. So, for example, I still have student debt, but my student debt is at 3.5%. Um, and I can make substantially more than 3.5% in the market. So I'm not rushing around to pay down that student debt. But I know some people have a lot higher student debts, student interest rate on their student debt, and some people just have higher student debt in general. So that percentage is a lot more money. So it really is specific to your own situation. But the way to handle debt, there's either two ways to look at it. If you have a lot of different debts, like credit card, student loan, auto loan, a bunch of different ones, um, two different strategies. You can either um, start with the lowest number, which is the lowest amount of debt, and you can start paying that off early and get some wins under your belt and try to knock one of those off so that you get rid of one of your debts. That is a popular strategy. I don't love that strategy just from a numbers perspective. Um, I think you should pay down your highest interest debt first, because that's going to eat away at your ability to get out of debt a lot more, generally speaking, than paying off your lower interest debt. Because some debt is good debt. Yeah, exactly, the snowball effect. So those are really the two ways I would go about it. But I'm a bigger fan of paying down your highest interest rate debt first. Um, Getting rid of that, you'll get a win eventually under your belt, but sometimes that could be your larger one. Um, and then I guess the last thing I would say about that kind of debt is I think credit cards are the biggest scam on earth when it comes to interest rates and people just being able to open them willy nilly and not really understanding what their interest rate is. I think right now they're sitting around 25%, which is absolutely insanity. And a lot of people just swipe the card and move on and build up that. That's one of the hardest ones to pay down because they're so egregious with their interest rates. So if you're paying off your credit card every month, I think that's great. But if you're not, that would be the last place that I go to try to meet your monthly expenses. I try to figure out other kinds of lines of credit other than a, uh, a credit card.
From there, can you jump into like settling with credit card companies as well as like because sometimes you just owe too much, right? And you're not going to be able to pay it.
Yeah,
So there is ways you can settle that to take a hit to your credit score temporarily.
yeah.
Because if you're already in that
You
much debt,
can,
it probably won't be hurting your credit more than it's already dumping. So
yeah. So there's a couple different options, and oftentimes credit card companies or debt servicers want to get something in the door. Um, so oftentimes, if you work with them and you ask them enough, they'll settle up with you at a certain amount and call it good so they can get some money in the door because some people just can't afford to get out of debt and it's too high. And I would, if you're in that situation, I would try to do that because their goal is to get some money in the door rather than nothing. And ultimately getting recapturing some of that loss that they had is their one priority rather than just getting it all and forcing someone into bankruptcy because then they get nothing. So Um, the settling up with the credit card companies is definitely uh, something to take a look at, as well as potentially transferring balances um, and getting kind of a grace period before interest rate kicks in. I think those are two strategies if you're really struggling to pay down that debt. I have to be fully transparent. I don't work with a ton of people just because based on my role and what I do for a living, most people that I work with aren't, if they have debt, it's because they haven't managed it well, but they still have substantial assets. So they're in debt by lack of financial literacy rather than snowballing out of control with debt. So I don't have a ton of experience in actually the logistics of what it takes to do some of these things around getting out of debt.
Okay. And then, so he did say his interest rate is about 6 to 7%. Total loan burden is 80,000, I believe, for student loans. So at what point do you want to, like, this is my question to you, Terrified, is at what point would you cancel, like, would you want to get rid of that debt first and like just completely like cancel like any amount you're contributing to your Roth, like taking that extra income that's coming out of your account and pay off that student loan debt before you start building up your retirement? Or would you want to build up your retirement while also trying to pay that off while it's also collecting interest?
Yeah. So at that interest rate, I mean, there are a lot of traders that can make a lot of money, right? I don't want to discount that. Like you, for example, you've had a relatively good track record. There are some other traders that do really well, but generally speaking, like if you're in a balanced portfolio, you're not making much more than 6 to 8% on a longer term basis per year.
Right.
If you're in only stocks, you're looking at like 10 to 12% over the long period of
Unless
time.
you get lucky and
And
you're in like a Palantir or you're in a
exactly, but that's a
MicroStrategy, but
specific
that's a
stock.
very small
Exactly,
percentage. Yeah.
exactly. So if you're lucky enough to hit one of those lottery tickets, that's awesome for you. But generally speaking, if you're in like a diversified stock portfolio, that's growth oriented, you're looking at generally speaking an annualized 10-year return of like 10 to 12%, which is still a really good return. But the delta on that is only 4%. And then if you're also paying taxes um, on some of those gains, then that makes the delta even different, right? Even lower. So at 6 to 7%, at that amount, I would start trying to snowball that loan down as fast as possible. Um, and then once you get it to a more manageable number where the interest isn't as high, that's when I would consider um, starting to contribute to the 401k or IRA in a little bit more of a fashion. What I would say though is that even at that interest rate, if you could contribute, if there's a match for you to take advantage of, match is free money. And if you can do that, I would get whatever your match is because it's essentially the only time that money is free um,
Right.
in life. So
So, like in
it
my
there's
example,
incentives. Exactly.
say I had student loan debt, I'm contributing 7% with 5% match. In that case, if I had student loan debt, you'd be saying basically I should do the 5%, so they match the 5%, and then that extra 2% I'm putting on, I should instead put towards that
Yes.
loan.
Yep.
Okay.
That would be my advice without knowing more about the
Right. Yeah,
situation.
that's just like a
Um,
general statement. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. All of these are really nuanced, right? Because everyone has their own situation. So it's really easy for me to talk at a high level, but hard for me to give anyone very specific advice without knowing a lot about their situation.
Because there's
But
the people that
um,
eat ramen noodles and use the Dollar Tree shampoo and conditioner, right? Like that, get out of debt that way. And then there's people that live their normal lives and just find a way to manage their time and money better, like maybe doing Uber Eats after work for, I mean, if they have a
yeah,
banger
whatever you
car, you
have
know
to
what I
do,
mean?
I would
Whatever you have to do,
I would get
even if it's an extra income stream.
exactly. And I think the big thing is getting that principal balance down
Right.
to a more serviceable level because 6 to 7% on 80,000 is a large number. But once you get that down into like the $25,000 range, that's a more manageable number. Um, and at that point, it could start to make a little bit more sense to invest in your retirement as well. But getting student debt free, credit card debt free, I'm a big fan of having no car loan. Really, a mortgage is kind of the only one that I think is people need a place to live. You can make an argument that renting for the long term could be better. Um, but that one's really the one where long-term debt, it's a 30-year, and you can refinance at some point, hopefully. So that's the one that I'm more comfortable with kind of saying it's okay for people to just take that on without too much consideration.
Definitely. Is there anything like with a higher level client that you've seen? I mean, obviously, without getting into specifics, we don't want to, make anyone uncomfortable, but like, is there an issue that you've seen that like, especially with financial literacy that was surprising for you to have, for someone of that net worth to have a problem with?
Oh, all the time. Let me tell you the first thing that you'll learn when you start talking to millionaires. One, millionaires are substantially more common than they used to be. And just because someone's a millionaire does not mean that they know anything about money. Very oftentimes millionaires don't know jack shit about money. Excuse my language, but they're really good at what they do for a living. Um, so, like for example, I work with scientists all the time who know way more and are way smarter than me about 90% of just life. Right? They're geniuses, like actual certified geniuses, but they can't spend their time to understand the tax code and different investment strategies that it takes because they're too busy in their day-to-day job where they need to be on and learning all the time. So just because someone has a lot of money does not mean they're good with money. And what I found is it's usually actually the lower income earners, so the people making sub 150 as a household that are millionaires rather than the high income earners. Because when you have a high income, generally speaking, you have a higher cost of living and you're used to a certain lifestyle. And then when that income goes away in retirement, I've seen many more high income earners waste 5 million than I have seen $150,000 income earners who saved steadily and started early become 10 millionaires. So it's really about lifestyle and discipline and starting early compared to just making a ton of money and you just ended up rich because you worked really hard. Having money and high income does not mean you're good with money. And I like to stress that because people think that millionaires kind of have it all figured out. And I would say 75% of them don't have it figured out. And I work with them every day. So that's one of the
That's
surprising things. To get into a specific, like high income earners are oftentimes paid incentive compensation. Um, and they believe in their company and they love their company. And oftentimes they'll keep that company stock and not realize that they're in a concentrated position. So I had a client that that loved their company. It was a small startup pharma company, which we can all kind of get behind at after hour and understand how volatile those things can be. And they really believed in it. They put the more of their own money than what they just got in compensation. And then COVID hit. No one got pneumonia anymore, and that company went out of business, and that person lost $500,000 because they didn't see the risk of having a concentrated position. Um, and that's a costly mistake. So that's just one specific example of how even if you have a high net worth, high income, it's very easy to make a mistake. And why it's good to spread your investments out among a bunch of different companies rather than just one, because it can hit big or it can go to zero.
yeah, that's I mean, I've witnessed that myself, right? Like I've had a substantial amount of money in my trading account that I did not start with. Like I'm looking I'm looking at $1,300 in my account right now, right? Um, I've taken some money out. Like that's not like because I tanked it down to grand. I have taken some money out, but at a certain point, like I was nearing $55,000 in the same account. So it's pretty crazy to go from that to this, even with taking money out realistically. Um,
Hmm.
it's difficult to go from that level down to this level and then be like, okay, I want to risk the rest of this.
Let's get back into it. Yep, right, exactly.
Yeah,
Which is one of the reasons that I think X52 is one of the most intriguing people on After Hours because he went to a million, down to zero, pretty much back to a million, like I think four times, and that just takes persistence. I don't care if he has good strategies or not. That's just pretty wild to me, and so I think he's a great follow. Just from you can see how someone builds conviction and continued persistence in that. Whether or not I'd follow his plays, I don't know for sure. He usually is taking more risk than I would.
since we're on the concept of like other creators, like I would like to open this up to another topic as well, which is like the interviews you've been doing with specific
Oh
creators
yeah,
from After Hours. I've found those pretty,
you were the first one, so
yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate you kicking it off.
Well, I appreciate that, and definitely, I think that that's a really good series as well. Like being able to know people personally through just and you one v oneing them on an interview is pretty nice. Um,
Yeah, I think it's great. You were the first one that I did, so I appreciate that. Um, the second one I did was really important to me. It was Color of Cash, and
yeah,
he's the reason that I started doing financial literacy posts. So I was really excited for that one, and and it's just very interesting his kind of journey he's gone through on After Hour, where he he made a lot of money, but then started getting into plays that he felt like were too risky, and the fact that he had the wherewithal to look at himself and back out until he cleaned up his portfolio. And I think today he said he's back for the foreseeable future. I think there's a lot to admire there. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. And having spoke to him offline and in that interview, he doesn't come from a financial professional background like I do. He taught himself all of this stuff, and the things that he has done have been really cool. And it just goes to show that even if you don't do this for a living, you can learn it if you put enough time into it. And there's not necessarily anything I could teach him. I mean, there's some things I would probably do a little bit differently, but generally speaking, he's got it together, and he understands it, and it just took time and patience and continued learning. Um, and then I just did one with Full Port or Bust, which I can't say enough good things about that guy. If you don't know who he is, you got to go follow him. And he's always looking to share information as well as absorb as much information as you can, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And he's the first one to check his ego at the door. And if someone has an interesting point, he will dive into that point with you to come to as close of a conclusion as you can, um, to make sure you're analyzing all the information. So can't say enough good things about him. One of the most humble people is the person I just did the other night that I just posted was Double Down to Win. Um, I love that guy. He's awesome. Easily one of the most humble. I don't want to air his personal stuff out there, but easily one of the most humble guys on the app. Always looking to share knowledge. He shared a bunch of ChatGPT tips on how you can utilize it better, um, to ask the right questions, because I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And we can talk about this a little bit more if you want, how people can utilize ChatGPT not only for trading but for financial literacy. But he shared a lot of stuff with me, and he's had a pretty incredible journey. And it's I talked to him for another, I think, hour after the interview. So that was a great one. And then I have another one that is coming out tomorrow or the next day that I'm really excited about. So stay tuned.
it's awesome, man.
but they've been great, absolutely phenomenal. I've learned a lot, and that's why I'm here, is to get in the heads of people like that. So it's been one of my favorite experiences, and I'm glad that I started doing.
Yeah, man. Honestly, I would have quit trading probably 3 or 4 months ago had after our not been a thing. And then obviously I'm the only one to blame for my port crashing and it had nothing to do with after hour. It's just hard to look at stock posts when you're down. You know what I mean? I've noticed that.
I, I agree, and I think the person I just interviewed had an interesting take, not on you, but on when you have a down day, and how you can kind of still look around, and if you can take yourself out of it and look at other people who are having up days, and analyze your situation. What could I have done differently? There's always the chance to rebound, and I know you just started in October with real money, but you've been paper trading for a while, and I have no doubt in my mind that you'll bounce back. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and
My
maybe this
problem,
evolve.
so when I was dealing with leaps and I was dealing with companies I did DD on, I was doing really well. It's when I jumped into the hype on the zero DTE stuff that I lost a lot of money because I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought I knew what I was doing. And I read the data wrong. And that's what got me. Basically, it was the day after Jerome Powell spoke, and the government was shutting down, possibly. But obviously it didn't, right? But we didn't know that at the time. We didn't know if a deal was going to be done. And I saw the VIX was cooling down. And I was like, why is the VIX cooling down? This government shutdown's looming. So I bought puts on Choo 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 with about $16,000, and those puts were then worth around $100,000 temporarily. Um, Instead of selling them, I held them, and I had originally hedged with call options, which if I would have held those, I would have been fine. But I sold the call options to then add to my put position because I was like, the government's going to shut down. QQQ is going to go down. And the way I read that data was wrong. Looking back at it, the VIX going down was Wall Street knowing at 10 a.m. my time, which is 11 Eastern. Wall Street had insider information that the government wasn't going to shut down. And that's information I didn't have. So I was betting against information Wall Street had with with my presumptions, if that makes sense. Based on
Yeah, I mean,
I basically looked at the VIX cooling down, said no, that's wrong, and bought puts instead of looking at the VIX being
oh,
like,
you were right in the short term. I
right,
think that I think that it's hard, because when you see gains and you have conviction behind something, that can be powerful. And I'm always of that. Like, me and Alloy have the same problem, where as soon as we start to see a little bit of green, it's like, it wouldn't suck to take some of that green now. So
yeah,
I'm consistently getting out too early. But it can be hard because you want to keep riding that wave. But I think having in mind, like, this is, at least I take some off the table at this amount of gain, I think would be a good thing for any trader. To but for that story in particular, is if you're up 10%, maybe take 10% off the table, right? Uh, and maybe go up from there. That I just came up with that on the top of my head, but like, find a find a gain amount that you have a hard rule where it's, I'm taking it off the table at this point, because uh, I need some profit, and then you're working with house money anyway. So, um, but yeah, I mean, you were right, at least in the short term. So I know that sucks.
it sucks that the money was there and I didn't pull it out, and then I wrote it to literally nearly $0 realistically. That really hurt my ego.
Well, I don't think it should hurt your ego. Everyone makes mistakes. No one's right all the time. Um,
Right, yeah,
it's just
definitely.
unfortunate. It's just unfortunate that and this goes back to kind of what I'm going to make a soundboard someday of Alloy and full port saying 1%, but those plays can make it huge, but they can also bring you down a lot.
It's
So,
also emotional
uh,
trading, right? Like I was sitting there trading when my mom was in the hospital, and that's what led to bad decisions is emotional trading.
yeah, I think that happened to me.
Self-destructive
So
self-destructive behavior occurs when you're emotionally trading, and that's a proven fact.
100% agree. That's why I'm not really in the market right now. I mean, I haven't exited my positions in my rules-based account, but I did exit a bunch of positions on my
Trading account.
trading account where I'm just kind of I don't know what's going to happen. I'm looking to buy a house here in the short term, so I'm not going to
Hmm.
unless I have really strong conviction. I'm not going to put that to work, and if I am, it's going to be 10%, so maybe like
I had pretty
$20,000.
strong conviction on Bitcoin running back to where it's at right now. So, I mean, realistically, if I would have been buying Bitcoin up at 91,000, 92, 93,000, like I saw it going back and testing 105, 106, possibly going to 110 with with the Trump stuff. So, I mean, that conviction plays playing out pretty well, and for me not to be in that play is kind of idiotic, but I digress.
I don't think so. I don't think it's idiotic. I
I
think
don't think it's
you can have
idiotic, but
conviction.
it was easy money. It would have been easy money to make.
I think it's really hard. I think it's really easy to say that in hindsight, right? Um, but
Because
yeah,
my trading strategy, I think when I was looking at it, I was like 92% correct on my trades, which is
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Ridiculous. And the 8% of trades I haven't made correctly were all zero DTE, except for one stock I bought. There was one stock I bought, but it was a smaller amount. And it's like for to have that percentage of a record and to
First
be
loss.
back
Yeah,
below your starting point is just
it's hard.
frustrating. You know what I
I
mean?
gotcha.
Like that
Yeah,
that's why like I cannot stress enough not to do trades you're not familiar with. To get that financial literacy, to get that knowledge under your belt before you start trading stuff that you just don't know the full picture about. Especially with that amount of risk. Like zero DTEs at the money is just
too risky.
ridiculous.
Yep,
Ridiculously
ridiculous. Yep.
risk.
I mean, you can make a lot of money, but you can lose a lot of money really quickly. I
Right.
know that's why. That's why, like when they do it in the Discord, they do it with like a couple $100
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
they're
get in,
trading
get
like
out.
less than 1% of their portfolios in most cases.
It's more for fun in that case. And if they make some money, they made like pizza money or something. Some of them make a lot more than that, but there's not a ton of money being thrown at DTEs, at least in the zero DTEs, at least from what I'm aware of in the Discord.
Right.
But I
No,
did
there's
want to
not.
answer the question before it gets lost here. Is someone asked how to use ChatGPT for DT and earnings reviews. Um, so I did talk to Double Down to Win about this, and if you go to that video, um, which I posted about it yesterday, he in the um, description of that video, he gave his prompt for how he trains ChatGPT. So he, whenever you go into ChatGPT, if you open up a new conversation, you can um, train it essentially in a certain way. And he starts off this one with a certain input to get the responses he wants or the quality of responses that he wants to get. Um, so that resource is available for everyone to use, and he shared that with me and wants people to use it. Um, I do have to step away for 1 second. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem, but life happens. And hey, Birdman commented saying he'd be curious to read books on psychology, times trading. Definitely, man. There's a lot that goes into trading on the psychological side because, like, when it comes to, especially when it comes to bad trades. Most of your good trades are just good conviction usually, but other than the conviction, like bad trades are usually done when some crazy stuff is going in your life and you really want to um you really want oh, lots of comments here. Where is that GPT/interview video? I believe when he gets back he'll mention that. We'll bring that back up, Adam. But bad trades, anytime you have like crazy stuff going on in your life, it's best to kind of just sell out of your positions or go into safer positions such as like 2QQ or SPY and just hold shares. Bitcoin's absolutely trashing right now, by the way. I don't know if you guys are seeing this on my screen here, but it's a pretty red candle there. Without even having candles enabled, you can just see the slope going down. I'm also on the live view, so relatively it's fine, but it's on the live chart, it's just looking really red. Oh, it looks like it's recovering though here. Yeah. Surrey says thanks. Adam says thanks. Chris. Yeah, I just got in a car accident. That sucked pretty bad. Any other questions, guys, while we're waiting here? What's the most amount of money you guys have made on a trade? For me, it was on a trade that I didn't sell out of, so it doesn't really count. I'd say the best trade I've ever done, I think I cashed out early, was on a
Hey, man.
Lululemon call. Oh, what's up, man?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Um, so sorry I had to step away. Shout out to my dads out there. I have a 4-year-old daughter who gets night terrors every time she has to pee. So so she woke up absolutely screaming. Um, so if I don't take care of that, the whole house wakes up. So sorry about that.
Oh, no problem, man. Someone just said that Trump made a meme coin?
No, it's Mara. Mara made a. I don't think so. Maybe he's talking about something else. But did you see the Mara did some sort of thing where they made like a picture of Trump out of the code from one
I'm
of the
guessing that's
bitcoins they
what they're
mined?
talking about.
I think so too. But that it was funny when I saw that for sure. Let me see. Can they click that? All right. I just posted uh in the chat. I don't know if you can like get to my YouTube from there, but the interview's the most recent one that was posted in there. I also
I
posted it in
saw
a
in the
half
chat.
hour.
Okay.
Let me see if
My bad.
I can just go get it. A link to it, but good resources in there, and I absolutely love Double Down to Win. I think he's an awesome guy. So I think there's a lot that people can learn from him. So let me just put this in here real quick. All right.
Trying to find what they're talking about because oh, here it is. MAGA meme coin leads Trump meme rally as strategic Bitcoin reserve speculation intensifies. Trump themed meme coins are gaining momentum.
Oh, so it's just people making pump and dump cryptos. That's
Yeah.
what it sounds like to me. That stuff makes me so mad. People lose a lot of money.
Well, there's also a Trump 47 block, which was, I believe, made by Mara. Bitcoin miner Mara Holdings immortalizes portrait of Trump as probably a coin. So probably like a limited, like a mine coin, like with a certain amount or something. Who knows, realistically.
I'm not as
Oh,
entrenched in crypto as a
Trump
lot of
meme
other
coin
people have.
launch. Okay, well, I'm not buying a Trump meme coin. I'm sorry, but it's not.
And ain't
I'm
no
not putting
way.
grandma's ashes on I'm not betting grandma's ashes on a Trump meme coin, all right?
No, no, uh, this is financial advice. Don't do that.
This is financial advice. Do not buy the Trump meme coin. That
I mean, you can try to put your
put
hand
20
in,
bucks
catch
in
it
it.
while it's
I
going up,
mean,
but yeah,
if
put
you're
20
willing
bucks
to
in it.
if you're willing to lose 20 bucks on it, I mean, it could go up to
Go
200
for it.
bucks, you know what I mean? So, if you
It
make
could.
money, you make money.
Just like if you make exactly.
$3 billion
Um,
market cap.
yeah,
That's
it's unfortunate.
wild that people have $3 billion in that. That's crazy. That's good to know, though. I
I
mean,
know.
some people might be interested in that stuff.
Yeah, the internet is an absolute crazy place.
The internet is on crack lately. Did you see? I think
It
it's
really
Kevin
is.
O'Leary recently made an offer to buy. A whole bunch of people are wanting to
TikTok,
buy
right?
TikTok. Yeah, that's an
So we'll see what happens
interesting.
with that.
That's an interesting thing. Like, China
Oh,
owns
I have
so much
something we can
land in
talk
the
about.
United States,
Oh, it's crazy.
and
I have
so,
something we can talk about
yeah, go ahead.
if you want.
Yeah.
So, a lot of uh, people who have followed Trump recently um, have noticed something that I think is really interesting. So, one of the reasons the 10-year Treasury is rising, um, along with other reasons, is that um, tariffs have a concern that they're going to bring inflation back. Um, and originally, that those tariffs were thought that it was going to be on China, a lot of them. But if you listen to what he's said recently, very recently, it seems like he's directing those tariffs more so at Mexico and Canada, which is very interesting because for the longest time he's been very hard on China. But I think the fact that they have a relationship with Russia, um, and they want to bring Taiwan back into their domicile, and he's a negotiator. I think there might be a deal to be made, and I'm not. I heard this elsewhere, so I'm not taking credit for this idea. But if you're willing to put some money on the table, Chinese stocks, if the U.S. and China can come to some sort of deal, could have a very strong return this year.
Not only that, but also just you can kind of hear it in what Elon Musk as well as Vivek was saying, right? Ramswani. Um, they were saying they want to bring over these skilled laborers, right? They didn't say from Mexico. They weren't talking about Mexico. They were talking about Taiwan. They want to bring over these
Mm,
skilled because no one in the United States has the temperance to create these semiconductors or the knowledge. So if you bring over all these, basically with the visas they were mentioning, like these work visas, what Trump as well as, I mean, and they got a lot of hate from MAGA, the MAGA crowd over this. When they were saying they want to bring skilled laborers to the United States because we don't have the skill here, we don't with semiconductors. And
yeah, it's
if
pretty much mostly in Taiwan, to be honest. That's where most
exactly,
of the.
and if China gets Taiwan, like that's just a huge national security risk when it comes to
Oh, it would blow
semiconductors.
up. It would blow up the U.S. markets if
So
they decided tomorrow they were going to invade Taiwan out of nowhere, which
yeah,
wouldn't really happen. There'd be some signal, uh, a little bit in advance at least,
so what
and the
I
U.S. would
believe
try to
is
stop it. But
going
that would
to
absolutely
occur
decimate
with this
markets.
is that I believe that's what Ramswani as well as Musk were talking about, where when specifically in their speeches when they're talking about skilled laborers, I think they want like a company like Nvidia to move to the United States. And for that to happen, they need to be able to bring their workforce here. Because if they can't bring their workforce here, it's not going to happen.
Yep.
So long term, that's what I see there. I know I got off topic, but like that is something that's been
No,
cooking
I
inside
don't
my head
disagree.
for a minute.
To me, that's one of the biggest risks of the market. Like
Semiconductors. Yeah.
there's macro data about the economy that could have people concerned a little bit, but to me, the biggest risk out there is what does China do with Taiwan? Because they've said for a long time what they want to do. And if that happens, that will absolutely decimate U.S. stock market. So, sorry, I'm reading one of these comments. Apple, it's hard to say about Apple. Um, I think that based on rhetoric in the tech community, I'm bearish on Apple, which is sad for me to say because it's my largest holding in my account that I follow very strict rules for, and all 90% of me wants to sell a lot of my Apple. Um, but I won't do it because I need to follow the rules that I have in place. But from my understanding, is the rhetoric in the tech community is that two things. One, they squeeze the fuck out of people for profits um, on the App Store. So that's a big problem for a lot of people. And then two, their protocol makes it very hard for technology companies to integrate their hardware into uh, seamlessly connecting with Apple. So they have almost a monopoly on the phone segment in the United States. And one of two things are going to happen for Apple to need to rebound. Either they need to find a way to keep more people on Apple than they're currently keeping, um, as well as innovating for a new product that is good. Because they haven't made something groundbreaking since the iPhone. Um, so they need to there needs to be something that comes out with them, or they need to let people in more and work with people more rather than squeeze them out because the tech will run past them if they do that too much. Yeah, they're losing market share in Asia. They're losing market share in the US. I mean, not as fast, but they aren't. If their thing is to keep business rather than innovate, I think that's a bad look for Apple, which makes me sad because I own a lot of them.
Apple is hoping that AI, etc., is going to be like a large money maker in the future for them, and like I just don't think it integrates well with their current products.
I agree. I think that there are going to be so many other AIs that it can't just be AI because they're not leading in AI anyway. So
Right.
there needs to be something else that they do that they work with someone or open it up to either groundbreak a new technology or find a way to integrate with more things so that they don't lose the market share they have because they will. I don't have an Apple and I don't want an Apple. I think there's way less flexibility, even though everything's easier on Apple. There's way less flexibility inside of an Apple product, which I don't like. I like flexibility. So
I mean,
that's
the
my
with Meta and the metaverse, it makes sense, said out loud, but it's just the way it worked out wasn't that great, right? Like imagine like a world where you can have it in virtual, right? They just didn't build the world up that well. Say like Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, just that name right there, like you already know it's gonna sell a couple, probably the most copies it's any game's ever sold in US history. I mean in world history, right? So that's what you would expect with something like a metaverse, right? Like a long term, oh, this is a place where you can have a virtual house and a virtual life and virtual whatever. It's the next best reality, right? But like, it just doesn't sell that well because it's shittily made.
I think that's a hard push. I think that's a really hard push.
But you essentially
People
sell the
people like
same
real
product.
things.
You essentially sell the same product with a game like Grand Theft Auto 6,
Agreed.
but like obviously not with the virtual headsets and all that. So it's I don't know. Virtual reality just hasn't took off, and if Apple could somehow make it better, I mean, that would be great with AI somehow, but I don't see it happening. I just think like people will always for anything virtual, people will always turn towards video games just because they're more engaging than because real life's boring. That's why people
There's not
play
risk
video
associated
games.
with them. There's not
Right,
risk associated with them. Not real risk.
right.
So there's risk associated with buying real assets inside of a virtual place because if that virtual place loses popularity, then you have wasted your money.
But you
Um,
buy Fortnite skins and you know you're just wasting money on them. People don't care because they want their characters to look good. Now, if you're trying to sell them an
exactly.
asset like, oh, here's a dress in this metaverse, it's like, I don't want to buy a $40 dress.
Yeah, the key thing is it's the game. There's a game, not just like a fake thing in a fake place. There's a game you're
Right.
playing.
There's an objective
So
at the end of the day.
yeah,
Like you have friends on there. I I don't know. I just the term of the metaverse just seemed like a online Sims to me. Like it just seemed
yeah.
like
I'm not a
kind of
fan.
off. Sorry if I went
I
off
have a
topic.
question
I
for you.
just jumped into that. Go ahead.
No, good. I have a question for you. What are your thoughts about the market for the next few months? We haven't really talked about the market and what we see for the future. So what do you think?
I mean, it depends. I hate to say this, but it depends on Donald Trump, which it's depended on Donald Trump for the last since he announced he was running for re-election, really. Like every significant market turn you've seen has been because of Donald Trump mostly saying something or something occurring. Like the Bitcoin rally, obviously he's pro been saying he's pro Bitcoin, so what does it do? It
Yeah, that one
rallies
is
to the
certainly specifically because of Trump.
yeah, I mean, no, you look at most stocks like the stock market on the election day just shot up for no I mean over the next 3 4 days like the entire market um they it just did really well during its first term but this time like we're coming in heavy we're talking about possibly ending wars which what will that do on the defense industry right we're talking about pump baby pump on the oil um I mean what's that going to do to gas prices and oil per barrel, right? We're talking about possibly Canada becoming the 51st state, 52nd state, 53rd state, 54th state, splitting it up into obviously it wouldn't be a if it buying Greenland,
That would be
the
crazy. I
largest
don't
real
know if that's
estate
even possible.
purchase, the largest real estate purchase since I think we bought like the Louisiana Purchase. Like maybe
That
no, I
just
think
seems wild to me.
is Alaska bigger than Greenland? Because I don't think so.
I don't know the answer to that.
That's a good question. I'll type that in real quick. But basically, like I was saying, it's a huge real estate purchase. Or like I don't know how we're gonna acquire it. And then we also have the war on the cartel. Like we're not a war on drugs. Like I think the war on drugs is over. It was over at some point. I don't remember. It's just a political thing. If they're saying it's over, because it's not over. It's still going on every day. And you're going to see a lot of policies. Like I believe Portland made it completely illegal to have drugs or something like that. Like or they took away the felonies for it. So now like you just go to Portland and it's just a whole bunch of zombies walking around. So
Yeah, just do drugs.
so I could see and then obviously there's the RFK Jr. side of Trump's little gambit here, right? So in that sense, like, is marijuana and because that's what he was running on was marijuana and psychedelics. Are both of those going to be completely legalized federally? That's going to push markets. So I mean, like, we have a lot, and then the Biden was really heavily against the drilling offshore, as well as in Alaska. Trump could come in and say, "Hey, you can drill in Alaska, you can drill offshore, you can do this, that, and the other." that's gonna push markets really heavily. It- like he is really strong on a lot of things, and every single one of the things he's strong on is market moving. So it's gonna be
Well, I
interesting.
will say that they care. They care a lot. That's one of the metrics that they use to determine if what they're doing is successful is how does the market move. Um,
Yeah,
which is probably selfish for the rich people because the 1% own 99% of the stock market. Um, but still, it is they care about that, and everyone will benefit from a rising stock market for the most part.
definitely.
Um, so I wanted to kind of just reference back to chat, or if you have other things you want to talk about, like if there, while I'm here, I'm happy to talk about really whatever you guys want to talk about, whether that be specific stocks. I can do my best. I mean, I'm not a trader by nature, but I look at the stock market more as part of my job every day. So happy to talk about really whatever you guys want to talk about, rather than us talking about meme coins for Trump
Meme coins
or
and the presidential political stuff. And obviously I'm not saying I'm for or against Trump. Like I'm not allowed to have an opinion there, so I was just going over kind of like the different topics. I wasn't saying if
no,
it
for
goes
sure.
one way or the other. I was saying no matter which way it goes, this is market moving. So just to clarify that up a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. I think the next 3 months are going to be wildly interesting, right? Because um, I think that inflation has been a little bit stickier than than what we were expecting. And
Right.
some of the numbers are coming in good, and other numbers are coming in not so good. Like, like it's great that payrolls went up, but it's not great that like the jobs number was interesting compared to the payroll number. Um, and people are making more money, but AI is, I think, stopping a ton of new jobs being created. Um,
But it's also
I
saving
think
a lot
people
of
are
these
waiting to
larger
see
companies a lot of money
a lot of
in
money. Yeah, so
labor.
there's kind of mixed things about it because the companies want interest rate cuts. That's good. Interest rate cuts are good for the market. Immediate, immediate hard stop. Interest rate means market goes up. Interest rate cuts. Um, but so that's great. But if unemployment doesn't go up, um, then the they might not cut, which is crazy to think about. So I think there's a lot of different macro things that the Fed's gonna talk about that will get the market jumpy, right? Like when Jerome speaks, it's gonna jump up or down, um, which is just more volatility, which I think it can be a really hard place to trade in for sure. It can be king making. I think Alloy said that the other day. This is where kings are made if you can play volatility well. But it's also
Definitely.
where a lot of money can be lost in volatility. Um, so I think that can be dangerous. But and also we're coming off two crazy back-to-back good years, where just historically speaking, that is not doesn't bode well for the third year in that cycle. Um, Granted, 22 was down, right? So we're not that far off of a pretty rough year. So it's really hard to forecast what this next year is going to look like from the stock market
I mean,
overall.
just while we've been talking here, Bitcoin has dropped back down to like 103. The market doesn't like these lack of news, right? Like I'm looking at the drop off on the hourly. It's went down like $1,200 in the last hour. Like I don't know. It's just the markets really just have been crab walking lately. Like if I type in choo 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 here, because that's a really good indicator. Year to
You just
date,
had a wild ride recently.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the chart, it looks very like it's been crab walking really, really bad.
But
It started January 1st off with like at 515. January 6th, it was at 527. January 13th, it was barely above $500. And then since then, it's climbed back up to 521. December 16th, it was at 538. Let's look at the 1 year chart. Yeah, I mean, ever since the election, like it's just been trying to rally, and then it looks like it triple topped actually. I mean,
yeah, well, I think this next week is going to be really important. I think what Jerome Powell says and then how Trump responds to that. Because one of the things that could happen is I think Jerome Powell only has 1 year left on his kind of term that he serves. And so what Trump effectively could do is create like a shadow Fed Reserve, right? Where Jerome Powell says what he wants to do, and then Trump says who he's going to appoint next year, and then that person says what they are going to do when
well,
they
because
are in, because he can't fire him. He's not allowed to fire him, but he can appoint someone new when Powell's done.
I just don't see any bearishness coming from honestly, the last 4 years should have been bearish and they weren't. Well, I mean, I guess they kind of were. Looking back, going into 2021, it was extremely, extremely like bullish, right? 2022, 2023, it was just horrid until March, about March 2023. Then like that started this huge run up.
Yeah, that's when hikes stopped and cuts started.
And like since then you just see this humongous freaking like green candle. And like how long is that gonna last realistically? Without the market taking a breather. And
It's got to take a breather.
some of the sentiment that I saw, like not just Trump, but Elon Musk as well as couple other people, they've pretty much said like publicly, like we're gonna like basically flash crash the market, and I could see that happening. Uh, also, all the
Yeah, I think
federal
that's real. The
cuts.
market moves. The market moves really fast nowadays. So I think the days of extended crashes are most likely.
I
I don't
don't
want to
know
say
if
they're
it would be
over,
enough to
but
drop the queues. So like I could see a lot of government contracts being renegotiated, not renegotiated, but like I just don't see all these contracts going into this presidency realistically. Like I think they're gonna go in and like when they do this federal audit, like they said they wanted to cut like 1 trillion. How much money was it that they were saying they're trying to cut? It was a large amount.
a lot. There's a lot of waste. So I know that their goal, selfishly, Elon wants to make government more efficient so he can reach his goals. So less regulation, less useless spending. Um, so I know it's a lot. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Not just that, but they're also going to just like clean up a lot of these government contracts that are just going into like a lot of this government spending is just ridiculous.
It goes into crazy things like I saw some memes about like here's what we're spending money on. Here's what your tax dollars are going to. Like the craziest things that no one could ever care about, really.
So I could definitely see that stuff just getting completely renegotiated. Um, I think personally, like there's just a lot of waste, and there it
Lots of
seems like they're
waste.
going
Yeah,
to try to fix that. Now, will that occur the way that people think it's going to? We'll see in the long term, right? Like no one knows currently. but hopefully it ends up benefiting the American people. So that's where I'm going to leave that
That
point
is
off
the
at.
goal, right?
Is there anything else you want to bring up before I cut it here? Any questions that pop?
Someone had one question about trading options that I feel like you're a little bit more
Okay.
adept at talking about than I am. Because personally, I really only buy covered calls because I think options are. Here's my take. I'll give my quick take on options. I think you can make a lot of money on options, which we see all the time in after hour. But in my opinion, options are really good for enhancing returns on co- a covered call basis. Um, so getting premium and it not hitting strike, like I just sold. I had a covered call for serve at $19 that expired today that I sold for $109 on 100 shares. And I did the same thing for the one the week before at $29 on serve. So I got free money basically because I didn't care if I got called away. But so premium to enhance returns for a covered call. And then hedging the downside. So I also shorted the market last week because I didn't know how those numbers would come in and I wanted to be prepared. So I had SQQQ and I lost a little bit of money, but I had a protective put in place. So I sold my SQQQ shares for 32 when I bought them at 33, right? So,
Right.
and right now I don't even know what it's trading at. I think it's probably down at like 25. So, so
So
I think there's a lot of value.
if you bought cooler stock, right, right here, right, about $1. This is when I was calling it out originally. It was about right here. If you bought it there and you bought 50-cent calls for 80 cents, and then or $4 calls for like five, $3 calls for 5 cents, $2 calls for 5 cents. That's what they were going for at that time, right? And then if you would have wrote it out to somewhere on this chart here, that would have been a ridiculous amount of money on the option side, while on the share side, I mean, you made like $2 per share, which is nice, but when you're taking 5 cent calls and turning them into, let's see here.
Yeah, you can talk more about this kind of because
I
I
mean,
don't
with this
do
here,
options like that.
you could have turned 5 cents into nearly like two and a half to $3. Every 5 cents that you bought. Well, hold up. Yeah, obviously then you times it per share, but you get the drift. You would have made a lot of money there. So for $5, you'd be making like, let's see, what percent return would that be? 5 cents to like it's incomprehensible. Like it's like thousands of percent, right? Like at a certain point. And that's if you had, I mean, I bought shares at that point. I didn't buy calls. If I would have bought calls and wrote them up to here, like I'd not be on After Hour anymore. I'd probably have like a vanity account, just to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. But like all my money would be
Yeah,
in dividend ETFs after that. Like that would have been enough to
yeah.
retire on right
I
there.
mean,
Like
there's some great
so
ways.
options can be really good. Um,
Yes.
it's just that timing, right? Not everyone's great at that timing,
Yeah, the
which I
timing's hard,
was
and
decent on that. Obviously it shows I'm down right now. This is my brother's. I guess full disclosure, this is my younger brother's port that I help manage. I bought him shares about right here. We sold covered calls on the way up, so this money here doesn't matter. It's the money we made off of options, selling covered calls. This is a different strategy than I do on my portfolio, so that explained there. But I did buy, I believe, in the 90 cent range on Cooler. So if you had $1 calls for 5 cents on Cooler, or 50-cent calls for like 40 cents on Cooler, like, and you wrote it up to $5 per share, or nearly $5 per share, uh, yeah, that would have been retirement money at that point. Just if you would have put $500 into five $5 calls, I mean, 5 cent calls. Like
Yeah, you're swimming in it.
you'd be chilling right now.
Yeah,
And that's not something that's within my risk tolerance at the time. So there's that.
yeah,
Same thing
yeah.
with
The way I think,
OPTT or whatever it is. Like I was also in that. So now it's on a downtrend, right? So I mean that's kind of
yeah,
just
everything's been kind of, except QQQ. I feel like a lot of stuff's been on the downtrend. So,
so I owned
um,
Ocean Power Technologies about right here, and I sold the shares about right here, right? So that sucks, right? I could have made a lot money selling it here. But if you would have had options here at 15 cents for like a 50-cent Ocean Power Technologies for 5 cents per share, right? You could have sold that like anywhere right here and you'd be chilling as well. Like you'd be, especially right here at the dollar range, that 5 cents would be worth anywhere from 50 cents all the way up to uh about $1.10 for the 5 cents that you spent per share, which would be $5 compared to like what is it, $500 or something like that. Like I might be wrong on that terminology. No, that sounds about right. Like that's the percent. That's how crazy this percent return right here would be.
mhm.
But you just have to time it correctly, and the
Yeah,
timing. A
it's
lot of
timing,
people
entry
aren't
and exit,
entry and exit, and most like 99% of people will lose money trading options because of entry and exit. So that's
for
the
sure.
problem is just being able to time that well. Because you could have bought here, and as long as you had a longer dated options call, even though it went down to 34 cents, like Theta would have ate right here, but realistically, you could have sold right here for like probably 400%, 500% profit, depending on what option you had. Like, and obviously, I don't care about this company. This company absolutely does not matter. Like, I'm just talking about in the general scale. Like, we could be talking about
Yeah,
Apple. Let me explain it with Apple because if I can spell Apple.
yeah. And while you're pulling it up, the way that the if I was going to trade options, I think implied volatility is usually the market is usually overdone on the implied volatility side. Um, Historically, volatility doesn't line up exactly with where implied volatility is. So, what I would do is, if I'm selling options, I would look at what's the likelihood or how many standard deviations away is that strike price from the current price, and what do I think the probability is, and what is Thinkorswim even will give that to you. What's the probability that it gets to the strike price? Which that's all kind of BS because numbers can change all the time. But generally speaking, if you're looking within two standard deviations, that's going to occur 95% of the time. So if you can find a premium that's kind of juiced up for some reason, um, which is what I did with Serve. Serve just had a crazy run, and there was almost no way it got to 29. So I sold a covered call on Serve, and it shocker, it dropped back down. Um, so I would encourage people to look at standard deviations of where the current price is versus where uh, standard deviation can put a strike price. And if you can have a high probability of success with either buying or selling options, um, I think that would be the way that I would do it. Now I don't buy calls generally speaking. Um, Yet I might at some point, but I don't feel like I'm knowledgeable enough to do that. But I'm focused mostly on what the probability of getting to that strike price is. Oftentimes that's in the form of selling, but you could use apply similar knowledge to buying calls. And then I the one thing I always say about options is theta always eats, and uh, that's kind of a common theme that's talked about. At least when I first joined After Hours on the Discord, where theta eats. So like if you can sell a call and you just have enough time period, data's going to eat away, and you'll be able to likely purchase that call back at a lower price, even if we're closer to that strike price, because ate it all up. So that's how I play with
Exactly.
options.
And like with this is a really good example of options. So I bought the serve at average cost of $13.50, right, for 200 shares. And when we got up to the $23 limit, I probably should have sold the shares, but instead I sold covered calls, which
That's
I
what I
sold
did.
them at the money because I was like, this is not going to last. So I made extra premium off of selling them at the money, and I still own the shares to write more covered calls on if I want to. So,
I
and
do too.
my shares are
I'm
still
making
up
the same play.
35%.
Yep, same play.
So,
I'm
I
doing
mean,
exactly the same thing.
I could have sold those shares at $23 and then bought them back for like 16 bucks, 14 bucks, but
And it's been in this interesting trend. I think serve is a really cool use case for like finding a range bound security because it
RXRX
has
as
jumped
well.
up. RXRX, both of them I think are good. I like the premium on serve a little bit more.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
but like you could like it's unlikely serve goes to just 29, right? So at the top right here, I would probably buy a protected put and expecting serve to at least over the next 2 months maybe go down to like 15 again and get some juicy premium on that or sell and rebuy if you want to do that.
Aren't they based out of
I
California?
think
Why has their stock not tanked?
RXRX
No.
serve.
Serve. Because like I'm looking at them right now.
Well,
Like
they
aren't they out of
spread. I
Cali?
think they spread. They are, but I think
Oh, they're
they
not in the part
recently
that burned
spread to
down.
other cities. Yeah,
Oh man, that's so smart. I'm so glad they're like because their stock could have went to like zero if it
yeah,
was based out of
yeah,
like LA, right?
yeah.
So I
It
mean
is crazy.
that's really good that they're spread out because that's what
Yeah,
you're talking
they
about earlier.
recently
Like,
got into more cities. So
so say your company's just out of LA and you're a millionaire, and then all of a sudden the city burns down and the fire insurance doesn't pay you out. I mean, you're broke. You know what I mean?
look,
So
yep,
that's why diversification's important.
yeah, wildly important. I think
Y-
that's at least for new traders. That's the thing that they don't take advantage of. They just look to jump in and hit a lotto ticket, which that can work. I mean, there's a lot of success stories with it, but for every success story, there's people. You got to think of it like this. For every success story, the person who has success, someone equally lost that trade on the other end.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there are a lot of people losing as well. And I think that's one of the Alloy has these bubbles from Prismatic that he streams in the Discord, right? And I had an interesting thought that for every bubble that's on there, there's a story behind that trade, and someone won that trade and someone lost that trade, and that's happening all the time. So if you're only in one company, there's a high potential for you to lose a trade at some point, and most people lose a lot of money in the market, and most people make a lot of money, and it's about having money spread out amongst different things. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Is that just diversification is king, and you don't need to knock the cover off the ball. You just need to be playing the game.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you talking with me, man. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up before start wrapping this up?
I just, I guess I'd first thank you for kind of putting me on like this. You were the first reason I got a lot of followers because we had a conversation and then you shouted me out, and I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the support of everyone else that follows me and has given me feedback and kind of tuned in to the content I put out there. I know it's never going to be the most popular content on After Hour because it's a trading app. It's not financial literacy app. But I think there's a lot of thirst for that in the community and a lot of desire to learn more. And um, that's what I'm here to do. And I hope I can continue being a resource for people. And if people have questions, a direct email for me is in my bio on After Hours. So um, it's easy to get in touch with me and happy to help.
All right, man. Well, with that, thank you for joining me here. That was Terrified of AI. Really appreciate you, man. And